is Carol May Whittick, spiritual life coach and your host of Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. What is the awakening? This is the moment in time when humanity rises up out of the darkness. Who is awakening? Each one of us present on earth today, reclaiming our sovereignty, seeking greater possibilities in our reality and looking for solutions. We know being awakened is not a lofty ideal but a necessity. If we can transform ourselves, we can change the world. Guests on Her Conversations will speak to your spirituality, sensuality and soul. Listen to their stories and hear how they are in service to the world. Let their words in these conversations embolden and inspire you. And this is a message to you if you feel like something is calling you to show up bigger in your life. Do you feel a sense of urgency and a mission to be a conscious creator in this world and not simply a consumer? If you know there's a purpose to your life, my purpose is to help you make it happen. And if this message is awakening a curiosity within you, I invite you to follow the link in the show notes and start the conversation with me. Also, I've begun a new series on Her Inspirations, which is the sister podcast to Higher Energetic Resonance Conversations. And for the next few weeks, I'll be exploring emotions. The series is called Emotions, a Deeper Knowing. Often we steer away from the more challenging emotions, and I'm exploring these emotions and showing how the emotions that we tend to steer away from, guilt, shame, fear, anger, apathy, frustration, all of those things are showing us a way that we can open up to more of ourselves. So come on over, listen to Her Inspirations and join the mailing list to receive the additional exclusives. My guest this week is Pippa Leslie. She is a QHHT hypnosis practitioner, reiki healer and host of the Conscious Convo, a podcast for the spiritually awakened, soul-searching, open-minded person who's ready to raise their consciousness. During our conversation, we discuss awakenings and the awakenings that people experienced as a result of the pandemic, and then the subsequent separations, growth and responsibilities that awakening brings into our lives. We also touch on narcissistic abuse, and Pippa shares how she will be helping people who've experienced narcissistic abuse in her practice. So as always, I begin by asking my guest. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel that higher energetic resonance?
In nature. Yeah, I love nature. And I think there's many answers I could give you for that question, because I think feeling into that higher resonance as well, I think it's community too. So being around like-minded people that see you for who you are, but nature seems to do that without even speaking. You know, like you can be around the trees and flowers and you just feel like they get you because they're just doing the thing, you know, they don't have to think about what they're doing. They're just showing up as they're meant to show up. So I think nature always gives me that massive boost in, you know, if I'm feeling down or I've got, having a bad day, nature's always my savior.
And before we get further into our conversation, Pippa, can I just give you a moment to tell your story, basically, of how you have got to do the work that you're doing now and the life you're leading now?
Yes, and if it's okay with you, Carol, I would love to set an intention for our chat, if that's okay.
Perfect, yeah.
So if you're driving, please don't close your eyes, but if you're with us now and you're in a safe space to do so, I just want you to close your eyes and just take a deep breath. And I just want to call in guides, spirit, the universe, God to this conversation today for Carol and I to bring forth our true self, our most authentic self, to deliver wisdom and guidance and any inspiration that people need as they're listening to this conversation today. Please allow us to share the wisdom and guidance that is needed most today for those listening. Allow us to bring forth our true self and anything that is needed for this now moment. And so it is, and so it is, and so it is. Thank you for that. So, hi, I'm Pippa Leslie, and I am a QHHT practitioner, which is short for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, which is Dolores Cannon's technique. And basically we can get into a little bit later if you want to, but it's a hypnosis technique that Dolores Cannon developed over a long time. I've been doing that for 2 years now, but amongst that, I am a healer and a spiritual mentor. I've just started my degree, my master's degree in trauma and somatic and narcissistic abuse. So I'm working through that at the moment as my master's. Just trying to learn as much as I can to bring forth different modalities for people to help heal. And just, like I mentioned, the intention, bring forth people's true selves, authentic selves, to help them speak their truth and heal their wounds and heal their trauma. So that's a big, huge passion of mine. Always been a healer, always wanted to heal. And yeah, so that's me in a nutshell in my career. A personal thing about me is I absolutely adore Disney. So I'm a Disney fanatic. My favorite color is pink. I love pink. That's like what I always think, your favorite color just kind of tells people who you are. Like, I'm so bubbly and confident and loving and kind. So pink's always been my favorite color. And I emigrated from the UK to New Zealand. So I'm talking to you today from New Zealand. That was a big move for me. And I just encourage anyone listening, be brave, because you never know where life's going to take you.
Before I go in deeper, just out of curiosity, was there like something that sparked you moving from the UK to New Zealand? Because it's such, well, anywhere that's not home is different, but just from an observer's point of view, someone who's never been there, looking at New Zealand just seems so different from a UK existence, in that there's so much more nature than, especially if you come from an urban environment within the UK. And then also there seems to be more space allowed for you to live than in the UK. Like, more people have more. It's my idea of New Zealand. Obviously, I've never been there, but what was it? Work that took you there, or was it just a calling that was the space for you to go to, and you just followed through on that?
It was my husband that brought me over here. So, long story short, my husband and I were separated for 18 months because of the COVID lockdown. So my husband's American, and he moved here quite a while ago with his kids and his ex-wife and built a life here. And unfortunately, they broke up their marriage. And when he met me, there was the opportunity to move to New Zealand. And I'd never thought of New Zealand because I always wanted to move to Australia. Australia was always a huge dream of mine. I've traveled in Australia, and I love that. I love the culture. I love being down this part of the world. And meeting Chris and being with Chris, I think that opportunity came up for us to move over there again, because he was in the States at the time. And COVID kind of just shook so many people. I think it just made people realize, like, do I really want to be here? Should I move? Just kind of give everyone a bit of a buzz to kind of really, create these dreams and create your reality, because you are huge, powerful manifestors. So yeah, we were separated for 18 months and we only reunited last year. So that was pretty tough, being away from my husband for 18 months physically because of the COVID borders. But I always knew I wanted to move out of the UK. I never saw myself living in the UK for a future. I never saw myself bringing children up in the UK. And my parents are visiting at the moment from the UK. So that's really nice to have them here. I have many friends and family over there, but I absolutely adore my life here.
I love that you know what's not for you, and yet sometimes you don't even know where it is that you're to go. I get senses of like, that's not really my space, and then, but also trusting that if you just sit in that limbo, almost, sometimes it's like you don't have the answer, you just know what isn't for you, and staying in that space, which can be quite uncomfortable for many people if they're not used to being in that space of like trust and receiving and waiting. Everyone wants to know what's happening all the time. It's like, what are you doing next? What's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? I know I have visions for what I want to do, but I don't necessarily know how it's fully going to unfold on the daily. I just know I wake up each morning and I'm like, okay, this is what we need to do today. And as much as we're doing today is bringing us closer, and that's the excitement for the day, and things come in or things don't come in, whichever way it is. Another thing that I wanted to speak to you about and expand on, because you mentioned that you're doing and you're qualified in QHHT, and you're talking about Dolores Cannon. And just from my perspective, or what I was feeling, especially in 2020 when we had this worldwide pandemic, it just really struck me as a shift in time, like that everyone was seeing. Because I feel that if you've been on some sort of spiritual and maybe even to an extent religious path, you've always had an idea that something's going to change. There's going to be a change in ages, and there's going to be a different experience for humanity, whatever that means. And everyone talks about it in different ways. And Dolores Cannon, if I remember correctly, always spoke about the new earth and how there are people in this world who have one experience of life, and then there are people who are not necessarily fully experiencing life, talking about background people and that kind of thing. So I always had this expectation that something was going to happen. I'd heard about it being, we're going into the Aquarian age, the change of the yugas, ascension, 3D to 5D, everyone had a different thing. So I just had an idea that, okay, at some point in time, there's going to be something, but I don't know what it's going to look like. And for me, it was when the pandemic really just shook the world. It kind of paused everything. And like you said, for you, it meant that you couldn't physically be with your partner for a year and a half. But for most people, it just made them pause and sit and look at the world, and then make of it what they will. And I, as always, just went into kind of observation mode. And as someone who had always felt that I wasn't really playing the game the way that society had laid it out for me, because it just didn't fit me. So then also being more of an observer and being on the periphery, it then felt like, because things turned around, that then this is really more so the time for me to kind of step up and move forward, and what that meant. But also there was such a split in people's perception of what was happening and what they understood about the world and the structures of the world, and who they believed to be in control and all those kinds of things, that really was a quickening period and a real kind of splitting of perceptions and the beginnings of that real change that more people could witness. I mean, how did that play out for you? What were you seeing at that point?
You make some really valid points there as well, Carol, because like I said, it affected everyone in so different ways. And for me, the key part of that was being away from my partner, which brought up for me a lot of insecurities, a lot of things to work on. We were just talking about this the other day. My husband and I did a lot of inner work while we were separated, because we did get tested, and gifted these opportunities to work on ourselves. And I think I saw that around my friends, but I think, like you mentioned, it brought this awakening to a lot of people because they had to slow down. They weren't in that busy, doing. They had to be. And that's what we are. We're human beings. And I think it brought up a lot of fear for people. It brought up a lot of insecurities for people. It brought up questions and curiosity for people. And there has been this big shift, this big awakening. Now, as much as I love Dolores, I don't agree with everything she says. And that's just because some things she says, I'm like, oh, well, there could be different things to that. Like I'm very open with when I listen to different teachers, but I love her QHHT technique. And I think I always think if she was alive through the pandemic, what would she have said, but I think for me, if someone was to ask me, about these things happening for the world, it's all meant to be. It's all for the greater good, even though it was really painful and it was devastating for so many people. We all went through something different. It was a huge radical shift in humanity. And I think we're still feeling the repercussions of it. I think a lot of us have got a bit of PTSD from COVID as well, because of just the illness and the fear and being, trapped from our loved ones. And there's just so much still to work on in ourselves. So I think when I was going through it myself, it was interesting to see what other friends were going through in, different scenarios. Things like not being in work and being bored. I've got friends now that say, I wish I'd spent the 18 months reading more, studying more, going within, meditating more, but we just did what we had to do. And I think we are still moving through something that, like you said, the Aquarian age, I do believe that the earth goes through stages. Everything is a cycle. Everything has to move through cycles. It's just part of nature. It's, as seasons, we all go through, nature and cycles. And as women, we go through cycles, and men go through cycles. And I think if we can just pause and reflect and be present in what's happening around us, it would be less likely to, move into that fear and doubt and despair. But it's easier said than done, because it's brought up a lot of pain and suffering for people. So for me, it was just about working on those fears, working on the insecurities, working on what was coming up for me. And it's definitely helped me now become stronger and more resilient.
And how do those of us who see ourselves like put in a place to offer healing, offer guidance in the world? I mean, how's it playing out for you? What do you feel are your responsibilities now? What do you feel now is your work in the way that your work may have changed post-pandemic? And what shifts or what differences have you noticed in the people that you work with, in the queries that they're coming to you with, or in what they're bringing to you and saying, I'm feeling this, that may have been different on the other side of this period of time?
Yeah, definitely. So it's a really good question. One thing I've noticed mostly is the need to want to speak the truth. People come to me and they want to just pour out how they feel. And I think the most important thing I've had to be responsible for, Carol, is holding a safe, non-judgmental space for them. We need that more than ever now, because so many women are speaking up. They're finding their voice. They're finding their home to speak up. As women, we've been shunned for many years to be quiet, to not speak our truth, because we're too much, we're too nice, we're too fat, we're too thin, we're too this, we're too that. And it's enough. I think women are finally saying enough, like enough. I have a voice, and what I want to say matters. So I think women coming to me definitely have been finding their voice and having a lot more confidence in wanting to share their opinions or share their insights, and just holding that safe space that's non-judgmental for them to just be themselves. Because the last thing they need is someone, coming in, because they have it with their family and friends. A lot of people who've had like spiritual awakenings throughout COVID and whenever, not just COVID, but at any time, they're finding like their family's going against them and they're losing friends, and it's a lonely journey at times. So I think if I can be able to have that safe space where, a lot of clients will say to me, oh, Pip, as soon as I come into your home, I just feel welcome, warm, like you're a friend, like you're a sister, and I want to create that for people, because there's nothing worse than going into like a therapy room or a healing room and you just feel, you want to be able to just walk in and be like a breath of fresh air, just to be yourself and not to be judged. And I give that space. So I'm really proud of that in myself.
Yeah, I hear you on that one as well. Like I do a lot of work with people with the voice also as well. So I know what it feels like, having gone through my own transformation of finding my own voice and being able to then just speak, and then also invite the conversations. I mean, that's why I started this podcast, is to have the conversations that I've always wanted to have, and to let them roll out to, as far as they possibly can. I don't think I've hit any limits really as well. I may not necessarily agree with everything that everyone says when they come on here, but I want to hear it. And I think it's valid for us to want to explore and ask questions, because even if you don't fully agree with what someone says, they might have a point of view where you're like, okay, I'm not 100% on board with it, but it kind of gives you more of a breadth of awareness of how wide the gamut of human experience is. Whereas so long we kind of go down this narrow path of like, this is the right way, this is what you do, this is what you should say, this is how you should feel. And then if you don't fit into any of that, then you have this sense of just questioning the very being of yourself, when actually you are all of these things, whatever it is, whoever disagrees with it. And building that strength is allowing yourself to kind of say the things that may be unpopular, and then seeing how you can root yourself in that discomfort when people disagree with you. And that's where the strength comes from. I mean, how did you find building that within yourself? Because to be able to hold that space for other people means that you've had to experience all the discomfort that has been created, and knowing how uncomfortable it is and frustrating it is to not be able to speak, then, you know, I'm talking from my point of view as well, is like, I will never minimize anybody. I might question what they say, but I'll never like shun them down just for seeing things the way that they do. How did you build that resilience and that openness within yourself?
I love that question. So I love a quote that I read years ago, and it says, "You can only meet people as deeply as you've met yourself." And it stuck with me for so long because I thought, okay, so if I want to meet people on these deeper levels, I've got to get to those depths of myself. And even though it's uncomfortable and it's hard and it's challenging, seeing your shadow and meeting your shadow and going into those uncomfortable conversations, going into those traumas, those past experiences that make up who we are. And you made a good point. We all perceive life differently through our own experience. So it's, as I said, the inner work, and I still do it now, you know, the progress that I have to keep working on myself. You know, we have a spiritual awakening and we think, oh God, I'm awake now. But they keep coming, they keep coming, they keep coming. And then the more deeper you meet yourself, I think you have that level of self-awareness so you can meet people at whatever level they need to be met at. Sometimes, you know, I have clients come and they just need like basic level. If I went into like my spiritual woo-woo inspirational talk, they'd be like, you know, they'd just be like, I don't get a word you said, Pip, but I appreciate what you've just said. So I think when you have those levels of awareness, it's easier for you to connect with people. And also, when you do start to deeply meet yourself, you attract the right tribe to have in your life. And yet you are going to meet people who will still gift you the opportunity to work on yourself, because it's always about inner work, and your tribe will change, but you still will have the people in your life that see you for who you are. And I think finding the strength in myself and realizing that I am a strong person, and I move through challenges in life with resilience, with the curiosity and asking myself questions. And I think that's really important what you do on the podcast, Carol, is that if we don't ask questions, we won't get answers. And that's a big key point to healing. You know, people think they need to go to like a therapist, a healer, whoever they want to go and see to have this huge healing moment. And I say to clients, sometimes it's the answers that bring the healing. And it's about asking the right questions. So we're taught that, you know, to ask questions and get curious, because you've got to get curious in your own healing as well. So I send my clients back with like homework and, you know, get them to do the work on themselves and get them to like go within, use their intuition, trust themselves. Because ultimately I say, you know, I want to get to a point where you don't need me. Like, I'm holding your hand, but you have the strength and the capability to do this. So it's just that given that the strength in you can then give strength to others. The more bright you shine, that light's just going to attract people to shine just as bright. And that's the whole point, is that those, you know, fanning the flames, you know, like if clients start to get it, or they voice note me and they're like, I had this like awakening today, or this aha moment, it just gives me so much joy, because I know they're just getting it and I've been there as well. So it's a constant curiosity for me on your self-awareness and going deeper each time. And I actually love it. It's quite addictive to me, but I've had to start stopping and not just making it all about the healing and the inner work, because we can get quite wrapped up in it as well. And I always remind people that you're not broken. You don't need fixing. There's nothing wrong with you. We just have these set of beliefs. We have this trauma. We have this pain that has been, you know, within us for a long time. And we have to also live life as well as the healing. So don't forget to live life while you're doing the inner work as well.
Oh my gosh, you just said so many things. I was like, tick, 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 tick. Because like last week, because I have a solo episode, like solo platform where I kind of go over different subjects, you know, each week. And it's kind of like me just talking about things that we encounter on our awakening, spiritual journey, you know, personal development, whichever way you want to come at it. Last week, I was talking about healing. And in particular, sometimes we can maybe get caught in the healing loop. so that we're always looking for the next thing and the next thing, and like, what's the next floor, and where's the next block, and where's the thing, and does this bit, and it can be this constant never-ending search for all the parts of us that are wounded, in order to become the fullness of ourselves, when I think it's kind of like a flickering between two. Like sometimes you do need to kind of really go into like a crevice of something and really explore it and feel the pain of what that is as well. So allow yourself, when you're going through your healing journey, to feel all the things, instead of using what we would normally use to, like, oh, you feel the pain, it's like, oh, I don't want to go through that, like, what's my coping mechanism, and use that and kind of avoid that and bypass the lesson that's being shown there for you as well. But then, like you say, also to experience the fullness of yourself, because it's not really that we are broken, it's that we've been kind of covered in all of these things because we went through the world and things come and stick themselves on us, and as we're kind of breaking free, we just need to kind of notice what they are. And sometimes we can have a breakthrough moment that just is like everything falls off, or other times it requires a lot more introspection, sitting with it, really understanding what that pain was, what it's caused us, and then getting into a space of understanding and forgiveness for it, so then you can transform it into others. And then what you were saying about resilience, and it's interesting as well, because you're talking about the masters that you're doing. There was a challenging relationship that I had to release. I'm saying it, I can say it in the most beautiful way now. That it was someone who had like been constantly for years really just not for me at all, but it's like, especially when it's a family member, it kind of looks like something, and you allow it to perpetuate until you're like, am I going to continue with this? But one of the things that this person said, because they were consistently and continuously like at me over time, and the time where was what was the breaking point for me was I was at my lowest point and they were in their most joy about it. But one of the things they kind of threw back at me, and I knew it wasn't a compliment, even though it's, some people say a complimentary phrase, but it's kind of a frustration for them. It was like, man, you're resilient, aren't you? Even though at that point it was the lowest point for me, in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to get through this. That resilience always shone through, even in my most broken points. And the learning for me at that point was, how can we just stay in a brighter part, and what I needed to do was to sever at least that relationship, because it affected everything. And it wasn't necessarily that person knew everyone that I knew in my life, but because I was allowing myself to be in that relationship, it then meant that I kind of accepted a low level of treatment from others. And the minute that I made the decision to release that and then just move away from it, my whole perception changed, because I was always going into that relationship and having to cower down because the bright light was such a trigger for them, and them, even they were chipping away and trying to pull me down. They recognized my resilience even in my most broken state. The question that I'm trying to ask you has slipped my mind, so I'm just asking you to respond to that, because there was a question
I wanted to respond to it. Yeah. First of all, I want to say congratulations, because releasing a friendship, a relationship, no matter who it is, takes a lot of courage and takes a lot of recognition in your worth. And I think sometimes, just take my hat off to you and say that I'm really proud of you for doing that, because it does take a lot. Like, because they say your level of tolerance changes as well, I think you just start to realize, like, oh, that's for me, that's not for me. That's for me, that's not for me. And that's okay. And I think, again, as women, we have this, it's like within us, it's like we have to kind of like pull it out of us that we want to make everyone happy. We want to be a good girl. We want to be a good wife, good friend, a good mother, a good sibling. And sometimes it's all too much. We can't please everybody, and in the process of not pleasing ourselves. Took me a long time to become selfish in the selfish energy of not from like a negative aspect. Selfish, where if I put my oxygen mask on first, I can help many more people. You probably heard that on the plane many times. A lot of motivational speakers will say, put your own oxygen mask on before helping others. And a few years ago, I would have been like, no, if I had my kids next to me, I would put theirs on first. But ultimately, I could die in the process. So if I put my own oxygen mask on first, I could help my kids plus 10 more or 5 more, you know? So there's a huge, huge message in that. And it's hard to be selfish when you are really selfless. But there's ways that you can find to be selfish in a light way, you know, like going for a massage, getting your nails done, taking time out, giving yourself a bath, going for a walk in nature, chilling out, taking on less. I get in the habit of taking on a lot and getting overwhelmed and having to cut back, because I think it's just that innate kind of mum wife mode that we go into. We're kind of like stuck in this cycle of do. I've got to be a wife and a mother, and I've got to keep doing all the house and the work and the cleaning. And it's this kind of, it's built in our DNA to be this, you know, housewife and to look after the home, as our great grandmothers did and great grandmothers did. But that's again all changing. And I think you start to realize that it doesn't matter if the house isn't clean. It doesn't matter if the beds haven't been changed. It doesn't matter if you've got laundry pile up to there. What matters is how you feel mentally, and how your self-care is. And you know, if doing the laundry and getting that down helps you mentally, go for it. Because I like having a clean home, and it definitely helps me to be clearer in my mind. But if I haven't vacuumed the house for 4 or 5 days, I'm not going to be like freaking out like I used to. So just kind of going off a little tangent there, but I think it's just relevant to say, like, when it comes to cutting relationships and friendships away, that is a selfish act, but it's an act that is needed, because it wasn't fulfilling you. It wasn't giving you what you needed. It wasn't joyous. It wasn't happy. It wasn't loving. It wasn't a give and receive. So you start again, get curious about what kind of relationships do I want to be in, and what kind of friendships do I want to attract. I'm going through that now. You know, I'm in a friendship breakup, and we don't talk about friendship breakups, do we? We talk about relationship breakups all the time. Heartbreak and going through divorce and breaking up with a boyfriend and or a girlfriend, and it's always around to have support. But where's the support to have friendship breakups or friendship breaks where we don't speak to friends for months and months and months? So I'm navigating that at the moment, and it's been really tough and challenging with the other things that I've had going on in my life over the last 6 months. I have definitely been gifted with the opportunities to either drop down into heavy emotions constantly or move through them with grace, because I've always been one to suppress anger. I've never been an angry person, and I've definitely suppressed resentment. I've suppressed all of those kind of heavy emotions, and they've been coming to the surface lately, but I've been releasing them in a safe way with my therapist. So that's always a really, really good thing to do. You know, asking for help is the strongest thing you could ever do. So yeah, I think moving through that relationship change is such a strength, Carol. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to just kind of like reverse a bit and just like, let's talk about the friendship breakdown as well, because during that period of time, I had to release a friendship because it was me walking away. It was me stepping away from a family member that I'm like, I can't, if I'm to live my life, if I'm to get out of the hole that I'm in now, emotionally, financially, everything like this, everything kind of just came to a halt. And now I can see why it had to happen. I had to like just go, okay, this is like a cutting point now. It's like you can go here or you can go there. But the recovery was painful. You know, one of the kind of the last ditch attempts that person then tried to make to punish me was to reach out to someone who had been a friend for a couple of decades that I'd kind of considered like more of a sibling, more of a chosen sibling, you know, the sister. It was very easy for them to be swayed by a narrative. You know, you're having someone that you've not seen for 15 years contact you completely out of the blue and tell you a story about me. And then when I'm then trying to explain myself to you, you're not listening. You're like, well, no, it's family. No, and I'm like, no. I'm trying to tell you something here, and just not being heard at that time. I remember the words that I said, what, I don't want to fall out about this. And they were saying, we're not going to fall out. And in my head was like, you're not hearing me. We're like, in my mind's like, this is the line. The minute I put down this call, if this call doesn't end with you at least listening to what I'm going to say, there's no relationship here. It was interesting on two levels because I'd had a dream about it prior. I'd had a foretelling of that situation like months before that didn't really make sense, but then made sense in that moment. And it was almost like I've walked to, putting the phone down and going, that almost felt like a double betrayal, like almost like, you're talking about delving into like narcissism and that whole phenomena. The way that they're then able to really kind of control or try and like ruin your life is then to, employ people around you to maintain the flying monkeys. Yeah. And this person became a flying monkey, and you're just like, but one thing that, over the time that it took me to like really process it, because once I walked away from that situation, it was like, okay, I'm away. Then it was dealing with the grief and the reality of it, that I'd close the door and go, maybe for this lifetime, this is it. But then you'll have flashbacks of things where you realize that this wasn't the first time it happened. It's just, this is the first time that you decided you were going to respond to it and make a decision based on what you were seeing. There'll always be something that what you're like, hang on, no, that's really, you have a way of kind of like pushing and ignoring and gaslighting yourself. But then when you're like, no, this is what really happened here. And recognizing that the friendship didn't actually end there. The friendship had ended before, and I'd chosen not to really take on board the messages that I'd been told, because I didn't want to let it go. But it had lost what it was supposed to be or what it could be. It was, but I kept it going because it was a legacy. We've known each other for so long, so let's keep going forward, even though you're not being supported, even though you're changing and the person's not seeing you. So you still kind of try and match the person that you are to maintain the friendship, even though you're like having me talking about me, this kind of like internal tug with yourself, because you're living your life. You see them less and less, but you keep them in your life anyway because you have this history. But then you realize every time you go back into that friendship, you're being less and less of who you are and going forward. So you can see that there's a tug already. But also the realization that it was so easy for them to believe a story about you just by one, a phone call from someone they'd not heard of for years and years and years, and the reality of that and all of the things that come crashing down. And when it comes to friendship, especially I think female friendships, and we kind of bring into our circle like sisters, or we want those sisters, and then sometimes understanding that sometimes not all of our sisters can go forward with us as we become more of who we are as women, and really answering the call to what womanhood needs to be in the new world. Like, it needs to be more spacious, it needs to be stronger, it needs to be truthful, it needs to stop being bitchy, it needs to stop being passive aggressive, it needs to stop being jealous. And when those things don't happen, to let them go. But the pain that we feel because we're female and we just take things on and in so many different ways, that it's a deeper mourning. And the dream that I had that had foretold it was I'd had a dream where in the dream this person was accusing me of doing something. And like it kind of, when I woke up, like the energy of it stayed with me. I'm like, that was just too real. They'd accused me of doing something in the dream, and I was spending just this dream going, no, I didn't. This is what happened. This is what happened. And it was just me trying to say, this is what happened. This is what happened, and them not hearing me. And then you wake up and then you're, oh, that was a dream. Oh, that was a dream. And you kind of like get back into the day realizing it was a dream. And then months later, the situation happens that may not mirror exactly what happened in the dream, but the emotion is the same of not being heard, trying to explain yourself and realizing that coming events cast their shadow as they were. So yeah, female friendships are an interesting one to navigate, that I think maybe from looking where the person that I was when the friendship began was just not the person that I was as I needed to leave the friendship. Probably even like, I'd say 5-6 years before it kind of broke down, or I made a line in the sand about it, that I could feel there was a separation, but I kept in going because of this legacy. I mean, maybe this is something that's going to come up more as some women grow and some women don't, that we are going to have to reorganize our friendships, because I'm seeing it again, but these are not kind of closer friendship, like more work colleagues or people I've collaborated with that are just like, where are you, what you're doing? I'm like, I told you what I'm doing this year. I need to get my head down and get this work done. And some need more of us than we're able to give them. And, especially as you're moving into your strength, they're still needing you in a way that if you support them fully, it's almost like they're draining. There's another situation that I'm having to, try and explain to someone who hasn't fully found themselves, that them wanting me to be at their beck and call all the time is not helping them. And it's not that I'm deserting them. It's like, I have to really focus this year. For me, it's been focused on creation. And they need to allow that. And I think it's simply because they've not found something for themselves to do in their life, that they need that time. In you saying that, I'm feeling, how can we create something for healing friendships? I mean, what are your thoughts, especially with your experience?
Well, thank you for sharing all that, Carol. I think friendships are a difficult one, aren't they? Because again, it's that sense of belonging that women want to feel. They want to feel included. They want to feel part of a tribe, a community. But that community can change. And I think we get so fixated on the friends that we've known since school, since we were kids. And I had to let go of a circle of friends from primary school and high school. If Americans are listening, elementary and, the grades of high school. So having to move through that, and at the time just being scared of rejection and scared of judgment and being an older self that I was in, I just never felt good when I was around them. Never felt seen, never felt heard. And the little girls in us, the inner child within us, just wants to be seen and wants to be heard. And I think as I grew, I outgrew them. And I remember one of the friends saying to me, and it really stuck with me for a long time, oh, this new person you are with this partner, which was not my partner currently, but an older partner, you're really good with him. Don't change. And that stuck with me to this day. And that was 10 years ago. And I thought, no, you want me to stay in that version of me because that's where you feel most comfortable around me. And what you've just said is that when you start to move and shine brighter, Carol, the people that aren't meant to be there will fall away. And I think sometimes we want to control that because we don't want to feel rejected. We don't want to lose friendships. We don't want to be seen to be, we don't want to be lonely. That's one of our fears, is that we don't want to be lonely. But as you move through the spiritual journey, as you move through this self-awareness, it does become more lonely because you become more introverted as well. So if you can trust the universe, God, source, however you want to resonate with that, if you trust that those people are meant to stay in your life for whatever reason, they might have to stay in your life forever. They might stay in your life for a year. They might stay in your life for like 2 years. A coach told me one day that if you could imagine driving a car at night and you've got your headlights on, you can only see like 200-300 yards ahead of you. Live life like that. Because when we start looking too far in the future, we start, obviously we have to have dreams and goals and we want to get to places. If we live in the past, we're just depressed and we're just reliving things that, with the anxiety and stuff. So if you can be present and just follow them headlights from moment to moment and trust that the right people will come into your life, the right places will come into your life, the right careers, the right situations, because I truly believe nothing will pass you by that is meant for you. But if you start to control it and get in your own way, the only thing that's stopping you is you, like you get in your own way. So if you can just get out of your way and just trust that the challenges will come up to help you grow. You'll lose people, you know, through death and friendship breakups and partners breakups and divorces, and there's so much loss, but there's also so much gain with life as well. So if we can just trust that we've chosen this journey and we've chosen this path, and what we're going through we can handle and we can get through it, and everything is temporary. So I always say, you know, when you have friends in your life and you have partners in your life and you have kids, if you're married for the rest of your life, that is still temporary, because this life on earth is temporary. We aren't here permanently, but our soul is permanent. So I think when we start to really get that curiosity and the self-awareness, it does help with friendships, because part of me, the little girl in me that wants to please everybody and wants to be liked by everybody and wants everyone to be happy, moving through a friendship loss has been hard for me, because I want everyone to like me and I want everyone still to think, oh, Pip can do no wrong. But it's like, now I'm like, the real true me is like, I don't care if you don't like me. I'm not going to apologize for being me. I'm not going to apologize for something I haven't done. I'm not going to apologize for making the decisions that I need to make. I'll always be kind. I'll always be compassionate. I'll always say sorry if I need to, but I won't be disrespected and I won't be made out something that I'm not, because I've become independent of the good opinion of others. Because yeah, when someone makes an opinion or an assumption or you accuses you of something, doesn't make it true. But if we believe it to be true, that's when all the kind of the challenging emotions come up. So it comes with this work too, Carol. You know, we get the negative comments and we get the negative messages and reviews, you know, they're going to come no matter what we do, no matter what career path you choose, no matter what decision you make, no matter what relationship you're in, you're not going to make everyone happy. There's going to be a negative Nancy waiting there to say, I don't agree with what you're saying. And they have to have their say, and that, you know what? And that's fine. Totally. You go for it, girl. You go for it, guy. Whatever you want to say, you say it. But it's how I perceive it to be true. You know, if someone says to you, Carol, I don't like you, you're this or you're that, you know, if you want to take that to heart, then you know, that's you taking it to heart. But, you know, read negative comments now, you get that little bit of your heart twinges a little bit and you think, oh, but you let go quicker. Like the more self-aware you become and the more healing you've done, those triggers don't last as long and you can shift them pretty quickly. So I think friendship breakups need to be spoken about more often. You know, you see a lot of coaches talking about like, oh, have you gone through a divorce lately and do you need support, you know, going through single life? What about like losing your best friend or losing just a really good friend? You know, there's not much out there to support women through that, because it's such a hard process. Like guys just brush it off. They're like, nah, whatever. Like guys just get on with it. They're not as sensitive as women in that respect of just that community. And I think it dates back to the witches. I'm not totally like fully into all that, but I do know that, you know, we turned on each other back then. We did turn on each other. So I think there's some generational trauma there from like 400 or 500 years ago where we don't have each other's backs as we used to, but it's getting better. We're having these conversations, you know, like if you reached out to me tomorrow, Carol, and said, hey, Pip, you know what? If you've got 5-10 minutes just to kind of chat to me, I'm just really struggling, I would be there like that for you in a heartbeat, and I don't even know you, because that's what women need right now, is just a shoulder, an ear, to be seen, to be heard. So I think that's the future of friendships and helping through breakups with support.
This could be the genesis of it, you know, the idea that it is, and also for anyone who feels a shift in their friendship circle. You know what, I know what it's like to be there and like be in the room and it's all the girls and we're taking pictures, and you know, back in the day when I used to drink and do all that kind of stuff, and it's, you know, posing and smiling, and there was just always something that like this looks so good, but like just like why am I not like overbursting with the joy that like our pictures look like, you know? And you look back on these pictures and just say, yeah, I look really good and everyone looked really happy, but were we really? We're all kind of trying to work out the next stages of our life and what that's going to look like. Is like at that point in time, were we that happy, or were we just kind of playing up to an ideal of this is what it looks like when you're in your 20s and your 30s and you're out with the girls and you're having fun and you're doing that kind of thing. To then separate from that facade, I would say. For me, it was a lot of it was a facade because I wasn't speaking about many of the deep things that were being shown to me at that point, or having that conversation, just because many weren't interested in that, or they weren't there yet, or it just wasn't their thing, you know? So it was this kind of secret that was told to nobody. So it's like, then you question it, it's like, well, if it's just me feeling this way, is it true? Does it really happen? And thankfully, you know, keeping that curiosity has then allowed me to just move and meet so many different people, men and women from all around the world, from in all different modalities, that have just shown me that there's more than one experience, but everyone has a trajectory that's very similar. But the details of that is going to be specific to them and what they need to learn, and then what they then need to turn into their life and their purpose. I wanted to find out just a little bit more about your masters, because the subjects that you're tackling within that are very much on the tip of people's tongues as well. And I think I kind of touched on the narcissism part of things, but just explain a little bit more about what it is that you're doing and how you feel that that will incorporate itself into your work.
Of course, yeah. So I've just started, so I'm on my third lesson at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So the Masters is run by Caroline Strawson. She's pretty big in the UK. She's a therapist, she's a trauma-informed coach, she does everything. She's just incredible. And she teaches narcissistic abuse. Now, I was always kind of, I wouldn't say I reject narcissistic abuse. I was always really uncomfortable to explore that side of it, because I'm the type of person that wants to see the good in everybody, and I want everyone to get along and just to be all happy. And it's like, that's actually not realistic. Mm-hmm. And for so long, Carol, I've wanted to go back to study a master's in therapy or in counseling or something similar, but not have to be in like uni in class for like 2 years. That's really, you know, really strict. Mm. And Caroline has been teaching this for a long time, and this is the first year that she's actually got it accredited to be a level 7 master's equivalent. So it's somatic trauma-informed coaching and leadership. So it's the first ever worldwide level 7 qualification. And we learn all things trauma, all things, you know, somatic, breath work. We're doing different modalities, brain spotting, SSP, which is sound and safe protocol. There's just so much I've yet to learn. The narcissistic abuse side of it's going to come next year, which I'm really looking forward to, because I've learned a lot about it. So I know a lot about it because I've read so much, because I've had so many clients coming to me with that partner, that mother, that sibling, you know, they're everywhere, unfortunately. And it's really sad to have clients come to me with those. I've got them in our family, you know, it's like they are everywhere. And I think people are becoming more aware of that. And I also think it's important to have that work to hand, because people are still in relationships or in, you know, friendships with those people, and they are just like, don't understand why they feel that way and can't get out of it. So I think just having that aspect of it here, like I'm having a specialization in narcissistic abuse, so I thought, okay, let's go for it, because it's going to be there for people when they come to see me and they're working through trauma. They're going to have a narcissist in their life, you know, the 1 in 7 around the world. And at least I've got that, because I'm not going to be talking about it all the time on my podcast and stuff, because I want to keep it all to spiritual topics. But to have that in my toolbox to help clients with when they come to see me, I think was really important, because every client I've seen prior to starting my master's, like I said, has had a narcissistic, you know, mother, father, ex-wife, ex-husband, sibling, friend. So being able to offer that to people is really important for me. It doesn't matter what I think. It just means that I have a tool to help them with it, you know, to help them to release some trauma and some healing there as well. So I'm excited to dive more into it. I am knee deep in trauma books, like I've done for so many years. I've always been really intrigued by trauma and how it's stored in the body. I'm actually reading the book, The Body Keeps the Score, at the moment, which is a really popular one. I follow people like Nicole LaPera. She's awesome with things like that. So it's always been fascinating for me. And I've always loved human behavior. And I've always loved like how we store things and how our brain works. And I just think so deeply. So I'm absolutely loving it. And by this time next year, I'll be level 7 qualified, trauma-informed, somatic trauma-informed coach and leader. So, and I'll have my narcissistic abuse. So watch this space.
My fascination as well is the dark side. I think it's the Scorpio in me, just wants to kind of delve into the shadows and the why is this happening? What brought somebody to that behavior? Just through my own observation of being within a family unit that had that behavior and being the target of that personality, you know, and then pulling away from it and just trying to work it out. It's like I can recognize how that behavior was supported and kind of developed over the course of a lifetime, you know, but then also seeing how it just expressed itself all the time and you know, one, waking up to it because it was online, it was on memes, it was like the empath narcissist, you know, there's that kind of thing. Whereas when I see something kind of like hashtagging and trending, I just feel like, okay, I'm not really going to go there. But when I really started to have a conversation with somebody about the behavior patterns that I was experiencing in that relationship, because I'd stayed away from anything to do with narcissism, I didn't really know anything about it. I didn't know the behaviors or anything like that. And someone then said to me, this is what that sounds like. My ex-husband was this is what it sounds like you're going through. And then I went deep into you know, the big names online who cover that as well. And then I was like, oh my God, textbook.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating. And I think when we get curious, like I said, the curiosity is the key here, because we have more compassion for people who are going through the abuse side of it. So if, you know, you work with someone who's had a narcissistic wife or husband, ex-husband, and you think, oh, you know, they're always on edge and they're really negative and they're always sad and depressed. And you think, why? And you think, well, you don't know what that person's been through or what they're actually going through, or they might not even be able to get out of that relationship. And you just start to have this curiosity for people and you have more compassion for them. Now, in the switch sense that I was so against narcissistic, not because I didn't believe in it, I just wanted to see the good in everybody. But then I had to realize, once I did the research like you, following the people, speaking to them on the podcast, is they can't change. So you have to accept it. So even though that's really sad for me, it makes me really sad that these people can't change. And I think there's a little part of me that still thinks some can. The scientists and the ones who kind of are experts think they can't. But I see the good in everything. But I think as these people have a lot to teach you, and I've obviously got personal experience around it with my husband and things like that. So it's such a huge topic, and it's big right now. But I think if anyone listening can just get curious, do your research, read your books, follow people online, just get curious about it. And you go, oh, like you said, Carol, you didn't know until someone said, oh, that sounds like my ex-husband. You go, oh, and you actually missed all the red flags because we're just so like tunnel vision. We just miss the red flags. And I think that's important in friendships too. How many times do we miss the red flags in friendships? We think, that's all right, whatever, you know, we still want to be in the crew. We still want to be part of the group. But when we actually get out of the friendship, we think, oh, that happened and that wasn't right. And I just didn't leave at that time. But you know what? Be gentle with yourself, because it still had a lot to teach you in that experience. So yeah, there's a lot to cover with that topic. That could be like another podcast we can do in a few months when I'm like further down the masters.
Yeah. It was like, for me, it was a huge revelation of like checking a box, just going, how could it be so clear? And then also, you know, like you're saying, wanting to see the best in people, wanting people to heal, but then healing of our own selves comes from self-awareness of what it is and where we're at and what we're displaying, good or bad. You know, like sometimes the healing isn't just solely from the point of view of us being a victim of something. It's also taking on the bigger responsibility of the fact that sometimes we're the perpetrators of some stuff that's not great, you know, and that sometimes is like a harder thing to take on, because we want to see ourselves as good and pure and kind, but sometimes our behaviors are as a result of something, or as a reaction of something, of a way that we've not incorporated a better behavior response or a forgiveness.
And also, Carol, like, we're human and we do get hurt. We do. You're going to get hurt. People are going to upset you. And I think it's what you do with that matters. Are you going to sit in it for weeks and months, or are you going to get the help and move through it and get curious on what it can, I'm not saying, because for me, the heavy emotions, I tend to bypass them because I always think, anger and despair and sadness takes me away from my spiritual path. But actually it doesn't. It brings me close to my spiritual path, because didn't God give us all these emotions to feel as a human? And they're all one. There's this polarity, this duality of life that, love and hate, there's all these different elements to it. It's all one. Mm-hmm. It's oneness. So we have to feel all of it it's like salvation. They say that you're suffering for salvation. It's like, you don't have to suffer to get there. So if you do feel anger, express it in a safe way. Go boxing, write some journaling, punch the pillow. If you feel sadness, cry it out, get in the bath, cry it out. There's just so many. If you've got grief, take time to grieve. There's all these different emotions that we feel, and just be around the people that love and care for you as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any last words as we wrap up as well? It's been great to kind of navigate the gamut of all the stuff as well, and there's so much more, but we can save that for another day. What can you leave us with, Pippa?
I'm feeling a quote, because I love quotes, because one of my spiritual teachers is Wayne Dyer, and he's just big on quotes. And this quote is my favorite quote, and I'll elaborate on it once I've said it. And the quote is by Hafiz, and it says, "Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, 'You owe me.' Look what a love like that can do. It can light up the whole world." And the reason I love that quote is because it's about service to others, about giving because we can, and not about what's in it for me. And that's the work of the ego. The true soul, the true self, the higher self is always in service for others. So what can you do today, anyone listening, to help someone, to serve someone, to be kind to someone, just because you can, not because you want something in return, just because you can, because you are a kind, loving, compassionate human being. And that's what I want to leave you with today.
Perfect. Beautiful. Where can people find you?
I hang out mostly on Instagram. I am Pippa Leslie. I'm on Facebook too, but Instagram is mostly where you can find me. And I also have a podcast called the Conscious Convo. If you want to check that out, I have lots of people on there, different parts of the world. And yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Pippa.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Pippa, for sharing with me, and thank you for listening. Find out more about me on my website, carolmaywhittick.com, carolmaywhittick.com. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn under Carol May Whittick, and on Instagram, Casmic, CAZMICK. Until the next week, have a great one. Take care.